Well, in Washington, a key piece of President Biden's agenda, the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, passed a big hurdle in the Senate today.
Let's go ahead and vote.
And vote they did.
The motion is agreed to.
67 to 27 to advance the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill.
Not one senator got everything they wanted, but we all got what we needed. This is how compromise works.
A compromise, according to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, the American people need.
Republicans and Democrats have radically different visions these days, but both those visions include physical infrastructure that works for all of our citizens.
McConnell and 17 other Republican senators voted to move the measure forward, but holdouts remain.
This bill should not pass.
Critical of both the size and scope of the nearly 3,000-page legislation.
$1 trillion is an astronomical number, and our children are going to have to pay for it.
Many in your party say that they're opposed to this on its substance, but also because that it's really just cover, giving cover to Democrats so that they can pass their multi-trillion-dollar reconciliation bill. I know you say they're separate, but a lot of Democrats, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, don't necessarily see it that way. Are they playing you here?
The fact that Pelosi says she has to link them tells you she doesn't have the votes for the $3.5 trillion package. One of my colleagues said, hey, a Democratic colleague, said infrastructure is the dessert. The $3.5 trillion spend a lot of money and tax a lot of money is spinach. I've eaten my dessert, and now I'm supposed to eat my spinach? I don't think so. The other thing, the Problem Solvers Caucus, a coalition of 28 Republicans, 28 Democrats, headed by Gottheimer and Fitzpatrick, have come out in favor of this. She doesn't need a radical left wing. She can pass the infrastructure package with just that committed group of American congressmen and women who want to see our country get better, to have the $110 billion for the roads and bridges and highways, et cetera, and the new jobs. They can pass the infrastructure package without having their radical left, and that, I think, opens a pathway.
President, I always thought the Laffer curve, which is the inspiration to the Republicans for trickle-down economics, was the most appropriately named economic device in history. It's a Laffer, and we've seen over and over again why it is. Giving tax breaks to the wealthy may make for a happy Christmas at Mar-a-Lago, but not for the rest of America. We want to invest in this nation, first in the infrastructure, and we're on the path to do it. I see the senator from Delaware is here, Senator Carper, and I just want to tell him the real test is not just whether we put votes on the board, and that is the bottom line in the Senate, but whether the center will hold, whether or not we have a strong enough center in the Senate dedicated to responsible investment in infrastructure and can overcome the forces outside. Former President Trump has been making all these speeches about how bad it is to have an infrastructure program. Well, I'd just like to remind the former president, he had no infrastructure program. Talked big, delivered nothing. Now we have a chance under President Biden to have one that is bipartisan in nature and truly will help this economy and this country over the long run.
But the Democratic Party's far left flank is resisting this simple fact. They were counting on this terrible but temporary to be their Trojan horse for permanent socialism. Case in point.
The Senate has voted to advance the bipartisan infrastructure bill and bring debate on the substitute amendment to an end. I repeat that Democrats are ready and willing to vote on additional amendments to the bill before moving to final passage. Once again, that will require the cooperation of our Republican colleagues. I hope they will cooperate so we can move more quickly. Otherwise, we'll proceed by the book and finish the bill. I said yesterday we could do this the easy way or the hard way. Yesterday, it appeared that some Republicans would like the Senate to do this the hard way. In any case, we'll keep proceeding until we get this bill done.
Every president, as I said, has tried to get the infrastructure bill done. One of those presidents is our most recent president, President Donald Trump, who pushed to pass a $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill during his time in office, in his budget. As a developer, he gets it. He understands the importance of infrastructure, and I applaud him for that. And honestly, I think he changed the discussion a little bit on my side of the aisle. I think he got more Republicans thinking, you know, one of my colleagues told me recently the two things the government ought to do and do well is national defense and infrastructure. Now, I think there are other things government does as well, but that's not a bad list for what the priorities ought to be for the federal government. Look at the interstate highway system as an example. Well, it needs help now. So I appreciate the fact that President Trump got the discussion going among Republicans who might not previously have focused on that.
Well, you talk to the Democrats, and they are actually eager to jump to this reckless tax and spending spree. It's going to start next week. And now they're talking about $3.5 to $5 trillion more of big government spending. It is time for the American people to stand up and speak out and say, we've had enough. It is time to stop, because the American people realize every one of them is in one way or another going to pay for this. We're suffering right now. Their paychecks are getting eaten away by inflation. $25 more a week every time you fill up with gas, $25 more a week when you go to the grocery store. So it's $50 less a week that you have to spend for other things just to buy the same amount of groceries and the same amount of gas that you were at the time that Joe Biden became president. We're talking about thousands of dollars a year eaten away from Americans' paychecks. It's time for the American people to stand up, speak out, and say enough is enough.
And now, breaking news, the Senate is in the final minutes of agreeing to a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. Senator, why are you in favor of this bill? Are you betraying the Republican base?
Not at all, Maria, and thanks for the opportunity. In addition to those two committees, I also serve on the Environment and Public Works Committee and happen to be the ranking Republican on the Transportation, Highway and Transportation Infrastructure, or Transportation Infrastructure Subcommittee. And just to do a little math for Kim, who's generally very, very bright, we have, in addition to the bill that came out of our committee, and then this compromise of the 1.2 trillion, 450 billion, that's over a third of it, is not just infrastructure, it's roads and bridges specifically. Well, we would like to get it through by Wednesday, preferably by Monday, and better yet today if it's at all possible. In terms of opening the door, the Democrats are going to do a much larger jam it down your throat, tax and spending, reckless deal. There's nothing that's going to stop that from happening. By passing this, however, we take hard infrastructure off the table for them, because that's part of the negotiation with the moderate Democrats. And we make the next deal much more difficult politically for moderate Democrats to support. So we're actually, in passing this, I think, have created a political advantage for moderates and for conservatives in this country. Because if we don't do this, the other outcome would be, why would moderate Democrats ever trust or negotiate with Republicans again while they're in the majority, when they could just blow up the filibuster, and we will be giving them every argument to do so, Maria. So I think we're going to get this through. I don't expect that we'll get final passage before probably late tomorrow or maybe even Tuesday morning. Okay. It'll be a good move in the right direction, and then they're going to open up the floodgates. I don't think there's any question. At which time we will use this bill and every other argument possible to fight against the real opponent here, and that is the progressives in the Democratic Party that are running their organization.